Get ready for a live tune in to the first time appearance, but none other than Dr. Craig Wright to the internet for this first interview show with Al at Sally Mayweather on X. They're going to be having him here shortly. I'm going to tune you in right now. We'll get a little recording going. So just kind of recap, we had him. Gosh, it's been about a year now that the COPA trial ended, and he was found out to be Satoshi Nakamoto. But this guy was on the same show with this Sally Mayweather about 2019. It's been 6 years now. At the time when they were doing BTC, I'm sorry, the entire split on the networks. So, all right, so we'll just get right into it, and we'll tune in to the show. Check it out, Dr. Craig Wright coming at you for the first time in many long days. All right, I'll see you at the top.
So much in here, and we appreciate your time. I can't thank you enough.
No problem. Thank you.
I don't know if you remember, but many moons ago, I used to host a podcast called The Agora. And in 2019, I had you on the show, and I remember you had, it was an audio only show, but you and I were like face to face. I remember you had this knight's armor in the background. I thought it was the coolest thing. Do you still have that?
I do, but it's in storage at the moment.
Okay.
It's not, so I didn't take everything across from UK up to Asia when I moved over here. So I've still got stuff in England.
Yeah, I thought that was sick. It's actually like a full-size like knight's armor.
Knight armor, that's cool.
So how do you like Southeast Asia? I was in the Philippines recently. Well, not recently, a few years ago. I absolutely loved it. What do you think? How are you enjoying it there?
Very much. I've been traveling around actually quite a lot.
Really?
It's interesting seeing how things are across the different countries in the Asian region. An example is if you go to Vietnam, where I've been with my wife a few times, the sort of ease of payments is remarkable compared with the West. The same with China and other things. I mean, I can pay in multiple countries using the same bank accounts instantly. And we're talking down to a dong. And if you know how much one dong is, we're talking fractions of a cent. So the competition is actually heating up, and people in blockchain don't even realize it. The technology is actually going to exceed them if they don't start working on something. So this concept BTC has, we're going to be a store of value, it's just ridiculous. So we have to actually start going into something more before it all collapses, and people start realizing in the West that the technology in the East is actually outpacing them.
Yeah, no doubt. We were just actually poking fun at the people who promote the store value narrative. I mean, it's not only is it's technically nonsensical, but it's from an economic perspective, it's completely illiterate. You have to be a medium of exchange before you become a store of value.
Correct.
Now
you have to have liquidity, the ability to have large amounts of money quickly liquidated is one of the things without the value changing up or down. And that's something people don't realize. The value should be stable against other goods.
Right. Well, I think I'm a nerd, so I like to read a lot of like old economics books, and what they say is that like the reason why it stores value is because you know that it's going to be accepted for exchanges in the future. If it's not going to be acceptable for exchanges, then why would it store value? How could it possibly store value? It's illogical. So, in fact, I'm hoping to get the Sci-Fi Moose on the show to sort of press him on some of these issues. We were supposed to interview him years ago, and he like backed out at the last second and blocked me. So.
Well, I think it comes down to this sort of 1984 new speak concept they have on definitions. They like to move definitions. So just like Bitcoin, blockchain, etc., they have an immutable sort of idea of immutability being changeable. Everything that they say changes. They have newspeak, and when they're talking about something like this, they don't take the definition that has been common in the past. They redefine it.
Right, of course. It's another thing we were just talking about as well. All right, so other than Southeast Asia, we also have something else in common. A love of sci-fi. You have a new book out, the Parallax Key.
Well, it's actually an old book.
Tell me
It's
all
actually
about
an
it.
old book. I'm starting to release some of the books I've been writing. I'm going to be updating this one, but that's a early version, free editing. I'm just completing my MFA, which is Master of Fine Arts in Literature at the moment, and I've been doing a lot of writing over the years. My Master's in English Literature, etc., as well. And I'm going to put out the various books that I've written in this. I've been sitting on them. I'll aim to get them published one day. I should actually pull my figure out and do something. So I've been writing a lot of things and just sticking them in the drawer. So now I'm going to undo the other and put it out. The concepts I've been looking at from Sci-Fi are around the topic of Neuralink. So I've got a few books on this topic. Now, an example of another one, I'll leave this one for you. The idea of a mind meld from a Vulcan perspective. But if we have a neural link, then we can share memories. So what happens if, say, a couple, for instance, someone married or in a relationship, now try and build their relationship by sharing their memories? Does that breed understanding? Now, you can think about, I have that person's memory, but that doesn't necessarily bring truth in the full sense. And what you understand and what you see may be interpreted differently by different people. Also, how does that work when we actually ourselves and we and we repress things?
Right.
What happens when you're there and you see someone, you look at a woman and you think about them, or you have a fantasy, and that's now shared with the other person. All those sort of areas.
Yeah,
And the other
I wouldn't
the
want
other
my
concept as
girlfriend
well.
to have to share my memories of college. Go ahead. Sorry to cut you off.
The and the other concept, I'm doing an anthology of these, is what happens if we start taking Grok and ChatGPT and all of this, and we have Neuralink, and people can search and find ideas real time and present them as their own. What happens to thought? So imagine now we have Neuralink and ChatGPT and Grok and all this, and we instantly search and have answers rather than thinking through ourselves. We sit there and we parrot what's come to us from online. So imagine Neuralinks on there, like Mr. Elon wants, and it's giving Grok's answers. Do we develop reason? Worse, what happens to truth? So we're going to spout what it tells us. This is somewhere between Aldous Huxley in 1984.
Right.
We remember what we're told. Neuralink becomes our memory, the same way books in the past became our memory. But unlike books, this is something that mutably changes. Something where, well, those at the top get to set all that we remember. Now, what happens when all of this occurs and it goes beyond reading, when our memories themselves can be overwritten?
Yeah, it's interesting. Who's your favorite sci-fi author? Do you have a favorite sci-fi book? I'm personally inclined towards Bob Heinlein. Who do you like to read?
I still like Neil Stevenson.
Okay, what is that? Cryptonomicon, stuff like that.
Intermute, etc.
Yes. He didn't write. He didn't write Snow Crash, did he?
Yes, he did.
He did. Okay, that's another great book. Another great book. We have a super chat here. Someone wants us to ask you about the Benford privacy wallet for SV.
Yeah, what would they like to know? Is it just a generalized question?
Just a general question. They said, can you ask Dr. Wright about the Benford privacy wallet for Bitcoin SV?
So what we have here is splitting up amounts into something that comes into natural patterns. So rather than choosing amounts that seem, well, easily derived, Benford's law is a logistic sort of decay from more ones down to very few zeros and nines. That's the natural distribution of numbers in the real world. Now, people, when they try and choose numbers, get things wrong. We have this idea that there should be a linear distribution of things, as many ones and twos as there are nines, which doesn't happen in nature. So by splitting up the amounts that you have and paying them, this you actually become more natural, more private. When you buy something, the amount you're going to pay, the way that it is distributed is not going to be how people think. And that's a tool that's been used in audit and in accounting for a long term, sort of finding errors and human manipulation. And by doing this, by looking more like a natural pattern and splitting up your amounts, it becomes more difficult for people to correlate and trace payments and know what you're building, know what you're buying, know where you're putting your money.
Right.
So it just adds privacy in small amounts. Now, if we low and you're paying for a coffee, say, and it's $4.99, and you pay for it in 10-cent coins, the person's not going to care that they're paid in 10-cent coins if it costs them an extra 10,000th of a cent. What they'll care is they get paid. Right. So if you get paid in lots of small amounts between 1 cent and 20 cents, then that then distributes the payment rather than the way we see in BTC and Ethereum, etc., in a way that's difficult to track.
So I'm sort of surprised to hear you say that, because I had recently had a post where I said something about privacy is the solution, and we need to move towards more private solutions. And you had replied, and you actually disagreed with me. And I guess you draw a distinction between privacy and anonymity. Is that correct?
That is very correct.
Talk to me about
privacy.
that.
So what people forget is liberty isn't just libertarian. Libertine. It is very different. It comes with responsibility. Virtue, for instance, it comes with a cost. So it's not exposing ourselves nakedly. It is thinking about the entirety of fitting in with the society that we're in. Now, what I mean by that is private comes with a responsibility. So it doesn't mean exposing everything to the public, but it does mean having traceability, a way of proving what you've done. So the distinction is anonymity means no records.
Okay.
Having a private record, a way of tracing and providing evidence, is very different to having nothing. When you have nothing, that's how you actually collapse society, with the most powerful force, the government that has corruption, is enabled to undermine everything. So if you think about it, in 1984, part of that society was the ability to erase records. The government could actually change the past and then change the future.
Well, isn't sometimes anonymity necessary, particularly when we're dealing with things like sensitive information, like I don't know, if you're, let's say you're in the army and you witnessed a massacre or something like that. You want to remain anonymous when you give this information to the press. Isn't it, aren't there certain circumstances where you could see it being necessary, where it's not involved with illicit activity?
No, not at all. There are whistleblower laws, and there's a distinction between anonymity and sort of just jumping things. Now, if you're putting people at risk, if your own people are potentially in danger, then that's different to releasing information. Now, releasing information requires a verifiable source. Is that real? Can you verify what happens? Is it staged? So if you go to court, if someone wants to be charged, if you want to see these things, then that's more than just dumping it on the media. How do you verify that? And when we're talking about whistleblower scenarios, the person remains private, not anonymous. If the SEC wants to charge a company, they can't do that until they have more than just an anonymous whistleblower.
Right.
Well, those people can give information to start something. To actually have an investigation requires real people. And the court can freeze records, they can make things so that it's not known, and your identity is maintained secretly within a small cache of people, but it's still known.
Well, what about like not to like put too fine of a point on it, but like isn't the use of a moniker sort of you know an example of anonymity? Like isn't that like a more of a quote unquote deliberate obfuscation, if you will, rather than being more like traceably accountable if I like use a moniker?
Not really. I mean, using a pseudonymous record is very different to being completely anonymous. Uh, for instance, with Bitcoin, all of the posts of Satoshi remained the posts of Satoshi.
Right.
Now, whether you want to be able to say that they link to a person is a different thing, but in this case, they shouldn't need to be linked to a person. The entire purpose of Bitcoin was to basically have something set in stone. And by having something set in stone, there doesn't need to be a leader who tells you how to interpret it. Rather, it's there, uh, well,
For the
unchanged.
right beauty in the eye of the beholder. Well, talking about Teranode, because I know a lot of people in the
Mm.
crypto world are paying attention to Teranode, and we'll get into this a little bit. But what is it? What is it?
Basically, it is um, a version of what I started working on, updated to work in current systems and hardware. Back in 2013, I started working on what was called then iDemon. That was designed to scale to millions of transactions a second. At the time, it was built around Intel's Xeon Phi hardware, which is actually quite cool for validation, etc. But my few transactions weren't enough to keep the thing sort of going, and they killed it off. So it's been updated to work across different systems, including different sort of cloud architecture, etc. And effectively, it's a way of not just actually billions of transactions per second being validated across multiple machines, a way of actually having subtree structures that prove within seconds that transactions have been mined and validated, so using a set Merkle structure, as will occur, and to scaling Bitcoin beyond what, well, people believe is possible.
Right.
So into the billions of transactions a second. Now, if we want Bitcoin to be more than just digital cash, to be a system for logistics, to be tracing goods, to be everything, that's what needs to occur.
Now, I was just at a conference and I ran into. I know you guys have a sort of contentious relationship, but I've seen you guys battle it out on Twitter. But I ran into Dr. Peter Risen, and
Hmm.
he gave a speech about a similar. It sounds like he has a very similar goal to what you do about scaling into these like massive numbers. But his idea is to use to do it via vis-a-vis hardware. He's got this little chip thing that's going to go in the back of the computer or something like that, and yeah, apparently you're gonna be able to scale like to some sort of crazy amount. What do you think about using hardware as a scaling solution?
Well, there is hardware and everything. I mean, that's the whole point. But just setting one chip on a single machine doesn't work. You have to remember the amount of bandwidth is going to be necessary to scale it. You have to be able to distribute between multiple machines. You have to split up processing of transactions, provably forming those into blocks. So it becomes an infrastructure, server farms, etc. So how do you then expect one machine? It's this idea everyone should run a node. Everyone shouldn't run a node.
Right, I agree.
Once you
It's
have
crazy.
the header, I mean, the block header enables you to follow every single transaction and prove that it exists in the blockchain. You don't need to validate every transaction that exists. You don't need to follow everything. All you need to care about is everything that you receive.
Now, Teranode, is Teranode currently being audited? What's the deal with that? And if you, I don't know how much you can share, maybe who's.
I mean, it goes through security audits all the time. It's occurring, of course, in the background. It is actually running live. There are people running it out there. It's closed source at the moment, as in GitHub, but a select few that you have to apply for access. That's not by my choice, but like all of these things, it doesn't always come down to
Any enterprise clients for Teranode or
nothing I can discuss. Sorry.
Okay. Well, maybe we'll keep our ears peeled to the news for that one. All right. Well, you've acquired an impressive set of patents over the years. No doubt about it. And I think last time we spoke, you mentioned.
Well, that's a wrong word. I haven't acquired anything. Acquired means purchase or obtain. I've created. That's a distinction.
Okay, so you're in possession of a large amount of patents. How do you respond?
Again, I'm not really in possession of. They're not sitting in my lap.
Well,
to be pedantic on words.
Okay, you created them. You created the patents. Is the terminology that we'll use. Fair. How do you respond to critics though who suggest that this sort of contradicts the decentralization that's sort of emphasized in the white paper?
Well, unless you take the term decentralization to have the meaning that Marx meant, which is a political form of decentralization, which even then is antithetical to how it ends up, then that's exactly the opposite. The use of patent is actually how you protect rights. So the large companies, the Silicon Valley megaliths, the giants, the sort of Elon Musk of the world, the Googles of the world, they're the ones who don't need patents. Patents protect the small element of the person who's creating something and upcoming. They never protect what's large. Google wants patents only because, well, it needed to grow. Now it doesn't care, of course. Now it wants access to everything. It wants to suck it up and use it without paying. The small inventor is the one that benefits from creativity, who then can actually build something and exploit his idea. That can't occur if the large incumbent can just throw in money and build better than you. So as an example, if I make the ultimate new invention that everyone wants, no one's going to invest in my idea if it's open, if anyone can take it. So this isn't an idea of decentralization, it's an idea of communism. Those people who sit there saying, oh, patents are bad, are saying property is bad. When you follow the same logical structure of argument, it goes to anything. Because any idea is an idea of the mind. The human mind is fundamental behind every single thing that is property, even land. Land, an idea of a border around a property, is not fundamentally anything other than human thought. We have decided, we have agreed, we have a consensus recognition as a society that this border matters and that that person owns it. That is not something in nature. That is not something in situ that has developed outside of humanity. Apes don't have land.
Doesn't ownership require scarcity? Like if something isn't scarce, how can how can I own the air molecules that I'm breathing? If it's not scarce, then the concept of ownership just probably doesn't apply. And I guess the libertarian argument against IP is that information isn't scarce, right? It exists. It's very abundant.
Well, there are two problems with your argument. One, you can own something that isn't scarce, but the value. So you can say, I own this box of air, And if you go, you can buy, for instance, in Kathmandu, you can buy a can of Kathmandu air that you can take home.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
So you own that air. I mean, where where it's actually canned is another
Right, yeah.
question.
Questionable
Probably canned
source.
as Kathmandu canned in Shenzhen. But so scarcity isn't required for ownership. You can own something that is anything but scarce. I can own a plot of dirt, random. Uh, Scarcity doesn't do anything more
Right.
than adding value. And scarcity itself is only one of the scissors, one of the blades of the scissors that add these things. Now, it's not a libertarian argument. You're saying that's a libertarian argument. No, it's not. Mises was actually made some very good points on the necessity of patents. Hayek did. Ayn Rand came up saying that the value of the human mind is the ultimate value. Now, everything comes down to human thought. If we don't have, and ideas might be common, but being an idea doesn't make it valuable. Being unique does. And if I have a thought that no one has had before, then whether it's copyright, whether it's intellectual property, then that idea is mine. That is something I have thought, I have created, I have strived for. And it is the accumulation of all of the work I've done, the life I've lived. It is everything that I've actually been in my existence, and that in itself is scarce. So to say that just because someone can copy it freely doesn't make it anything more than it can be copied freely. Every idea in history has had some way of being controlled. And the alternative is rather than having a system like patents where eventually it becomes freely, depending on the patent, from 10, 15 to 20, 25 years, open to everyone, it is now a system that is protected in trade secrets. Something like Google. Google will say about how they open everything, but the majority of their code is behind closed doors where never anyone gets to see.
Right.
And
Not surprising. Okay. Well, let's switch gears a little bit. I don't know how much you could say. I don't want to get anybody in trouble here. But I do want to ask you where, if you can answer, where does the name Satoshi Nakamoto come from? Where was that? Where does the idea, where does the moniker come from? What's the story behind it?
well, I mean, because of court orders, I can't say anything about the other. But my analogy would be, and what I thus believe, is a combination of, uh, well, Japanese philosophy and a piss take at the world, which is uh, ash is a good, well, analogy for things. If you think about the phoenix rising, etc., Ash Ketchum is actually Satoshi, but Mr. Tomonagata Nakamoto is also one of my favorite philosophers. Not that much of his work survived.
Well, what was his name? I never actually heard of him.
Tomonagata Nakamoto.
Tominagato Nakamoto. I have to write that down. Okay.
He was a Tokugawa period philosopher from Osaka. At the time when, ironically, the centralization of Japan occurred, that meant that they had to reformulate a lot of the economics of the time. So many of the things we see as modern Japan came around that period of history. So if you think about sushi, the sushi was actually invented uh, at the middle of the Tokugawa period because all of the lords had to come into Tokyo, Kyoto, and when they came to visit from their prefecture, they would basically stop and have the equivalent of fast food, restaurant food. And sushi, things like this were actually the equivalent of what we see as fast food now. You stop by, you have a few pieces of something you can walk off on, and off you go, which is very different to traditional Japanese food before then. So it's ironic we have this idea of Japanese food going back in history. But even things like Katsukari came about because about 100 years ago, there were a lot of Indian workers in Japan, Tokyo, etc., not treated well, but there, and they ate their curries, etc., and the Japanese transmuted it into what we have as a katsu curry now. So cultural appropriation, what can you say?
Okay. All right. Again, again, I don't know what you can talk about, what you can't talk about. So if you feel free to tell us to, move on. Why not just put the whole issue to rest and just send me $1 from Satoshi's wallet right now? And just, I mean, even the most hardcore Bitcoin maxi out there, the most toxic of the toxic maxis is going to have to accept, Satoshi's identity if just a freaking dollar of that wallet moves. So why not?
Let's speak in hypotheticals.
Okay, fair.
So wouldn't that undermine the very nature of things? And wouldn't that also be that you don't believe anyway? The possession isn't the proof of identity. So, I mean, the argument was already out there from Mr. Maxwell and others that even if a Satoshi wallet moved, and Peter Todd said this, that there's no way of proving it's Satoshi, it's probably stolen.
Well, nothing will satisfy that law.
I know, but let's go a bit further. Now, if you have the ideas of Satoshi, the ideas themselves speak for themselves, not reinterpreted. But Bitcoin is electronic cash. That means something. That doesn't mean digital store of value system for large transactions. Small casual transactions, well, that doesn't mean putting large amounts of savings into a ETF. It means something else. So all of these words, when taken at their face value, actually mean something. And that's very different to having to have someone sit there like a god and explain it.
Okay.
So you want to say everyone will believe you, but it's not me they should be believing. And think about this for a moment. Where is the ultimate sort of way of undermining Bitcoin? If you have that definitive statement, if you have the very concept that there must be a leader, that there must be a person in charge, isn't that antithetical to everything it's meant to be? I mean, yes, you know who created DNS, you know who, if you look it up, you know who created sort of the other things. You can pull out and go, oh, Paul Vixie did X in the RFCs, and you can sort of analyze that, but no one really cares. The RFC is there. It's not the person that you're appealing to. It is no longer more than the idea. And the idea of Bitcoin is what really matters, of what we have to try and get through. So, like it or not, that isn't particularly helpful. If you actually wanted that, it also becomes something that, what are you going to prove? You're going to prove every single coin that's owned? Are you going to sit there and go, well, actually, this is how much I'm worth. I'm going to digitally sign every single coin just to show whether these ones are rightly or wrongly attributable to me. I mean, which isn't something I want to do.
I don't blame you.
My finances. Yeah.
I wouldn't want to go through all that either. Smart contracts. You're not a fan.
I'm not a fan of the term. I mean, the idea actually existed well before smart contracts. The sort of problem is that everyone now attributes it to a blog post done 20 years after the concept. And the blog post basically plagiarized a whole lot of ideas that were implemented by Rand and the US Army, etc. Yeah, there are systems around digital signing of contracts in EDI going back to the late 70s, as I pointed out before. These are what people now call smart contracts. They're not smart, and they're not a contract. So, first of all, a contract is between people, not machines. Now, in EDI, you can actually wrap that, having an agreement that we accept the terms of what is exchanged by these machines, and that is the contract. And smart implies intelligence. And having a set of predefined conditionals is anything but intelligent, as we've seen in the various attacks, starting not only from Bitcoin with the sort of theft of money from Mt. Gox, with EBTC, then into all of the Ethereum cock-ups. Smart is anything but true. So these are a conditional manner of actually verifying an exchange. And if it's done correctly, that's good. But if you try and make it so that there are no ways of highlighting this, that it runs all by itself, then you're just stupid.
Well,
and the best thing to say...
Do you believe that code could be law? Do you believe that...
No.
So, like, in other words, like if, you know, technically, isn't it feasible that you and I come up with an agreement and then we just transfer that agreement, we convert it into some sort of cipher? If we had done that, if we did that, would that make the contract void?
That itself doesn't. The contract is an agreement between people, by definition. Now, Timothy Wu, back 25 years ago, had a great takedown of the concept of code as law. So if you look up some of his writing, you'll see this. Now, the idea is, we can make an agreement and set it in code, but contracts are beyond just having something fixed. Not all contracts are contracts, so to speak. If, for instance, we have an illegal contract, then it's not a contract.
Right.
It's void ab initio. I can't have a contract, other than mafia misuse of the term, to have a contract on someone. It's not actually a contract. While we say we have a contract, I don't have a legal contract. A legal contract is something defined as a term of art and law. Now, it's common law, then equated into civil law, equated into everything else. But for it to be a contract, it needs to fulfill certain sort of agreement, offer, acceptance, etc. And that's between people. So while I can set up code, the code is just a evidentiary documentation of this. The people are what make it a contract. So machines can't contract.
Okay, fair enough. I understand the point. It's a distinction. I think we can all get behind that one. We are running out of time, I'm being told by my producer here. I want to have so many more questions for you, but I guess we'll wrap it up here. What does the future of P2P eCash look like? Give me, like, I don't know. What is it? Where are we in 5 years? Where are we in 50 years? What do you think? I think we have, what, 2-3 minutes left?
Ooh.
1 minute.
5 minutes. Yeah. All right. 5 minutes. Sorry, 5 years. 5 years becomes difficult. Who knows? What I would hope and envision for the future is direct exchange between individuals. The ability to have value, not through a ETF, not through a bank, but to have something really scary, a global system, not one that is set by a country, but is truly global. So, yeah, I can transfer money to someone in Somalia for goods and services through Vietnam, something instant,
right,
updatable, etc. Something where I can actually do an exchange where machines interact, where I can allow an AI to take my writing and pay me in micropayments for use,
like the
not
systems
theft.
in Southeast Asia that you were seeing.
Except without having to have the bank there mediate it, without having the Chinese government decide what is right and wrong in my bank balance, depending on my social credit and how much of them.
Did we lose him? Yeah. We lost him. Let's see if we can get him back on.
Apologies, guys.
See if we can get him back on.
Yeah, give us 1 second. We'll get him right back on, guys.
Yeah, I just texted my producer to see what's going on, and maybe he can get him in here. I had some more questions for him. I wanted to ask him about tokens. I wanted to ask him about some more about the bullshit drama and stuff. By the way, guys, xmrchat.com/Sal if you want to get on there.
We'll repost it in the chat there, Alex.
CIA kicked him off. Hopefully we can get him back on because I did have a couple more things I wanted to get to.
Deep state at work, yeah. Wouldn't be the
Perhaps
first
so you
time
can
they...
ask those couple more things.
Hey, there we
Here
go.
we go.
Is he back? I hear him.
I am.
Hey,
Awesome.
cool.
Sorry, we lost you there for a minute.
One of the guys in the chat said the CIA kicked you off.
They're not that smart.
Good point. Good point.
Too much credit is given to them.
Okay, so all right. Last time we spoke, it was 2019. So it was 6 years ago we spoke. It's been a while, and we spoke about the coming rise of tokenization. And if I remember correctly, it's been a while, but I think you agreed about the potential for tokens, but you correctly suggested that we were a bit early. Do you still see a potential for tokenizing? I don't know. You tell me. Everything, tokenized assets, securities, paintings, cars. Give me some examples. And how far off are we?
We need business to accept the idea. So it's like everything. Once it starts, it's going to be a flood. So we need to get business to understand that they can actually do this. Right now, they still believe that they can't because Ethereum has limits. Everything has limits, but it shouldn't, and it doesn't. So what I'm doing in now putting out material around EDI, that I'm calling EEI. If you read the post I've been putting out, that I'm planning to do daily, 5 days a week, so to speak, is to get people to understand what you can do, how you can actually do things like combining and splitting, how you can have fungible goods versus non-fungible goods, how you can put that into a box, unpack the box, what it means. Now, in doing this, what we have is a traceable form of ownership, one that is able to have records that can't be, well, mutated, cheated, etc. And that in itself has value, but it will take time for people to understand it. And like everything else, when it does happen, it will follow the exponential sort of path until it gets to saturation, because all of these things are not exponential. They're actually an S-curve logistic. They seem exponential at first, but then you run out of people to give it to. So what we will find is when it takes off, it will take off massively. We just can't predict when. And no matter what, someone in the future will do it because there is value there. Being able to trace logistic goods internationally is a multi-billion-dollar industry.
What about things like securities and assets, stuff like that? I mean, is there a future for tokenizing stocks and bonds? I mean, if they are, what's going to stop people from trading them in a sort of permissionless fashion?
Well, first of all, they already are. The concept of dematerialization only happened about 2019 in India, which was, I think, the last country on earth to do it. Maybe apart from Somalia, because I don't even know if they have a stock exchange. But going back to the 70s and 80s, England, Australia, the US, all tokenized goods. Now, the distinction here isn't whether shares are tokenized or not. They are a database token, all of them. You don't hold a piece of paper as your share certificate. And that in itself was a form of tokenized asset. It just wasn't electronic. So electronic tokens already exist. You have them now. If you own shares in Apple, if you own shares in Google, you own a token. You may not hold it. The distinction is if you're not a registered broker, you don't hold your token. They do it for you. Now,
Right.
what the distinction you're talking about is I will actually be able to hold this myself and sell it myself.
Yeah.
Now, that scares the bejesus out of everyone in government because,
Right.
oh, you can't control it. But think about this for a moment. If you had a bearer share in the past, if you had even a company share in the past, 100 years ago, I didn't need to go to the exchange. The exchange was the way to sell it at market, but I could do an over-the-counter exchange of my shares.
Right.
I could take my share certificate and I could go up to you and I could go, I want 10 beanie babies and a bag of nuts. And if you made that agreement, that was what we do. So that existed. We had that in the past. That is the foundation of what our society was built on. Now we have added all these regulations to protect people, usually from themselves, i.e., because we want to make sure that, well, we extract value out of them, we control them, we keep them under the thumb, and we slowly allow government to erode value and take from us. But that foundation isn't necessarily sort of the way that government argues. It's not going to be anarchist. It doesn't have to be. We can actually say KYC needs to be built into these exchanges. I can exchange this amount of transactions a day without KYC, and then I go over it. I must do auto filing, which can happen. So it can be private. I can say I'm now selling this, this now belongs to, and it can remain private. The reality is, if you're rich enough, it already does. I can structure an overseas holding company with enough layers that even with ultimate ownership regulations, no one knows. So if I'm rich,
True.
I can do it. I can hire nominees, and you can say, oh, that's illegal. What? If you have enough nominees, no one's going to find out. I mean, being illegal doesn't stop people from doing things. Being illegal doesn't stop people from raping, murdering, stealing. So that's a terrible argument. What we need to do is actually create something so that we can have all the necessary controls, but do it without having to give up our rights.
Yeah, no, you draw an interesting point there about like how like you know if people are rich enough they can sort of just use shell corporations and stuff like that to hide ownership anyway.
Well, that's the irony of all of this. If you're rich enough, you get around moving money, you get around taxes. You can actually have money overseas. You can live in multiple locations. If you you can become non-tax resident, apart from being American, with global taxation. If you live in multiple jurisdictions and you stay 5 months at a time in many, then you become non-domiciled from a tax perspective. So people do that. In Australia, there was a person the ATO always wanted to watch, which was Reg Grundy, who was a TV producer, etc., who had a lot of money. He spent time going back and forwards on his yacht and traveling overseas, and just enough time in Australia to not be resident. And they sat there literally. The ATO used to have a stopwatch and tick the thing when he came into the country or not.
Oh God. All right. Well, let's move on a little bit here. I wanted to ask about some of this drama that has unfolded over the past few years. I have a number of questions here. I don't even know where to start. I guess a lot of your critics will point to this courtroom dispute over the definition of the term an unsigned integer. Now, I'm admittedly I'm a technical moron. I don't have the first clue what it is, but I understand. I've read some of your supporters who believe that you gave a brilliant answer, and I've read some of your detractors who think you gave a nonsensical answer. So again, I don't know what you can talk about, but and if you can't, then just tell us to fuck off. But what's this all about?
Well, I mean, it's hard to actually know what someone's doing. And at the end of, I think, 18 days of being on trial, you're tired. So that's the perfect time to answer that. So it's bigger. Well, technically, if you look at the distribution between numbers, whether you have 0 to 4.3 billion, or halve that, negative 2 billion to positive 2 billion, the number effectively allows it to be bigger in an unsigned integer. What do you want to know about it? I mean, you can't sit there and query that in a courtroom. I mean, how do you want me to phrase this? And as an ASPE, I can get caught out on these questions. So do I know what it is? Of course I know what it is. I mean, I've got a PhD in computer science. I have a master's in data science from a Russian university, HSE, which is the Moscow equivalent of the LSE, which I actually think is more rigorous. So I've studied them both, the LSE and HSE. And I can definitively tell you that the Russians, when it comes to mathematics and science, are more rigorous than British universities now. And this is from a person who's got more British degrees than he has Russian degrees.
Well, our producer is from Russia, so we try to only hire the best and brightest around here. Now, last time we spoke, and again, it was a while ago, and I guess maybe after this, we'll wrap it up. We'll go to some audience questions. I want to be respectful of your time. Last time we spoke, I was sort of like the libertarian, gung ho, down with the government, and you were the more like relaxed, moderate, take it easy kind of tone. After everything that they've put you through in the last 5 to 6 years, are you coming around to my libertarian point of view? Are you getting fed up with the way that the state is treating you?
Okay, so there are 2 points here. One, you're more libertine rather than libertarian view, and I'll stick with the on liberalism by von Mises' definition of this. The concept, like Rand had, without pointing out the flaws of her era, forgetting that we're human, not machines, then the issue isn't what you're getting at. It isn't the problem of the state or not. It is what the state has become. And I don't agree with that either. I don't believe we should have so many sort of legislative changes. Law should be simple. We should go back to common law. The majority of them, practically everything can be solved through common law, contrary to what people say. If we go into the concept of technology, well, technology covered the telex and the fax machine. The idea was you have an analogy and you go, this is like. And the speculation there in British cases was, if I take a ferry where someone's contracting across a river and we don't know what gets heard or not, then we can speculate to the ferryman came across, so therefore he actually got the message. So these things have occurred in common law. Common law has always adapted to technology. What doesn't is legislation. When we have to have parliamentarians coming there and going, well, actually, we're going to give you another 20 volumes, all of which are that thick, in 8-point font, and wrap that round. Well, as soon as you do that, as soon as you try and embrace everything, not in human reason, but define it, then it's static and stasis. It's no longer something that is flexible. The common law is flexible. Legislative law is not. And we have to get our parliamentarians to stop putting their fucking fingers into things and really just allow people to actually do things properly. But because they are voted in the way that they are, and because we have denigrated the concept of sort of education into not teaching virtue, not teaching how to think, rationality, but rather, oh, we need to sign up X to get a job, then we have created a class of people who no longer think, no longer have rational thought. And to have a virtuous society, we need educated, rational people. So the problem that we have here is we're slowly removing intelligence, removing rational thought, and allowing people to become anti-human, because humanity is rational thinking. I
Yeah,
mean,
but see,
that's
no,
why Grok.
I agree with you. But like when I hear you say this, I'm like, well, the degradation of the educational system. That's because we got public schools. I mean, you sound like you've become more libertarian over the last 5 or 6 years. You're definitely sounding like you're moving a little bit towards our. Yeah. I wouldn't put you as a
I haven't
Rothbard
changed that.
yet, but
No, I haven't changed. I still embrace the concept on liberal, on liberalism. Now,
Yeah.
but you have to remember that virtue comes with a cost. Freedom comes with a cost. It isn't just libertine. It isn't anything you want to do. It isn't what Roger Ver thinks, that I can just breach rules. You can actually think of society as property rights as well. This is where anyone allowed to come into my country is a bad idea. People have to be allowed to embrace the sort of culture that is already there. And yes, that doesn't mean we're static. The cultural property that we have developed is itself property. And it might have a wide ownership, which causes problems in how we do it. But if I'm American or I'm Australian or I'm British, then all of that is part of the cultural heritage and property that people have. And they need to think of this differently. So they need to start valuing what is there rather than allowing people to undermine it by yelling out emotive slogans.
Okay, let's go to a couple questions from the audience. If you guys have anything in here that you want to ask Dr. Craig Wright, now's your opportunity. Let's see. Perfect time to ask him about his thoughts on the corruption of law firms and judges. I don't even know what you're talking about there. This is fire. The British put people in prison for memes. That's true. They do.
Yes, I mean, that's unfortunate. The sort of nature of British society has changed remarkably. Australia as well.
Big time.
Ironically, I'm finding more freedom in Asia. So Vietnam, a nominally communist country, have found freedom in Britain, to say the truth.
It's actually well, I mean, it's kind of crazy. These old communist countries are becoming more and more classically liberal, and then classically liberal countries are becoming more and more communist, if you will. England, Australia,
Ireland.
So,
Ireland's kind of going downhill right now also.
one of the things I've noticed in some of the schools in Russia as well, they're teaching PPE on classic liberalism. So they're doing economics based on classical economic theory, which isn't something you see in the West as much. So now we're trying to teach not even Keynesian, but Samuel's version of Keynes, which is completely twisted anyway. And they're teaching that because it's a good government thing. It's where you get your money from government sources. Whereas the Russians, who are almost integrated policy, are teaching something that's actually more freedom-based, but it's funny.
yeah. Our producer Alex, who's from Russia, and he's like, he actually just got his U.S. citizenship, and he's like, he's more about freedom than some of the people that
Me. Yeah.
Well, he's Irish.
I'm Irish,
so.
but yeah, he's definitely adopted, America more than I have already.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, if we don't have any questions for Dr. Craig Wright, let's be respectful of his time. I can't thank you enough for doing this. It's been a long time. Hopefully we don't wait another 5 or 6 years for us to do this again. This was fun, and I enjoy picking your brain. I know some of these topics are sensitive, and you've been a good sport about it. So Yeah. Thank you again for your time. And I can't thank you enough.
And just something for all those people
Please.
out there. Yes, S Tomonagata, CS Tomonagata on Twitter is me. It is my account. I did say that in court. The other ones were all controlled and filtered, etc. So this is my account with all my swearing, with my rawness, whatever I feel like. When I don't swear, I don't swear. When I do swear, I do. But it's my choice. The difference is I don't have handlers anymore, which is really good. So no one gets to filter any of that. So, and no, it's not all machine, although I do put things. I found it funny. No one seemed. My wife actually made a comment on these things. Like I put a number of headers, like when I got accused of ChatGPT from there. And I actually had ones that had at the bottom, haha, I'm human, got you trolls. And no one reads to the end of my long posts.
Yeah, somebody had said to me, they were like, yeah, Craig Wright's not replying to you. That's a bot. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure it is.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't reply to everyone. No, I reply to some things, but I don't sit there on Twitter all day. I make my posts and I do other things. And I select based somewhat on Twitter's algorithm about which it decides to show me or not, which is really screwed up anyway. Hiding a lot of things that sometimes I actually go through and search for all the things it hides, which is actually harder than it sounds. And it puts some good replies into, this is probable spam. Like actually someone said something intelligent, which I think is what they call spam now.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you look at some of these threads on Twitter, it's like all the responses, it's just spam and, invest in this. And, I also have I don't know about you, but I have 1 million impersonators.
Yeah. In fact, one of Sal's impersonators messaged me
For like some crypto scam or something like that.
And I'm like, you do know I'm on the show, right?
That's why I got the blue check in the hopes. I got
part of it.
I got the blue check in the hopes of like making it easier to differentiate me from the imposters, but it hasn't really. I mean, there's imposter accounts with tens of thousands of followers, so.
Yep.
Some crazy questions here, but yeah, we're not even going to get into that. All right. Thank you so much. You're the man. I appreciate your time. And let's do this again soon.
No problem.
All right. Great. Take
Okay,
care
have
now.
a great day.
You too. God bless. So yeah, it was great. He's a contentious figure in the cryptocurrency community. So some of these topics are kind of like, I don't know what he can talk about, what he can't talk about. And you want to be fair, but you want to be firm. Right. You want to ask the question